Hey Nepers, it's me, Wild Neptune, and this is going to be a update video of sort on the channel and on my feelings about Epic 7. Before that though, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and consider following me on Twitch at twitch.tv/WildNeptune. I've actually recorded this before, but some of the audio was acting weird, so I had to do it again, unfortunately. Long story short, for the time being, my streaming of Epic 7, at least my own account, is going to be severely limited. I'll probably only stream things like summonings, maybe gear rolling, stuff like that. But as for other content, that's not going to be streamed. I will still do account help reviews for other players. I will still be playing the game in largely the same way I have been for the past couple of years now, but just not in front of other people. And you can probably guess this does have to do with the state of PvP in the game right now, and that is largely what this video is going to be talking about. As for what I am going to be doing on stream, I've been playing Final Fantasy XIV. I have been having a lot of fun with it. I do maybe want to do other things too. I'm considering things like Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl. I'm also considering maybe trying to get back into Dungeons & Dragons, but that's for the future. And right now, let's talk about some of the issues I'm having with Epic 7. Now, a lot of people are going to point to the levels of power creep that the game has had recently. No example is better than Angel of Light Angelica here, or AOL. I think the power creep is an issue. It is not the only issue, though. It is compounded in not only new units that are coming out, but also how buffs happen, stuff like that. And all this is going to be kind of interwoven into why I think the state of World Arena, and to a lesser extent some other PvP-ish content, is pretty bad right now. Let's talk about the power creep first, though. In AOL's case, she's just way too strong. She should have never been released with her current kit. She does things where even if you have ways to deal with her, like I do, my win rate against her is actually pretty high. This is because I specifically draft in a way where if she's available to my opponent, I will always consider that she's going to be picked. So that's how strong she is. She's one of the few units in the game where I have to make sure I have an out to this unit. And there are a couple other units like this too. Fairy Tail and Bellion are other ones that I feel skew drafts a little bit too hard. And it doesn't even really matter if they have counters or not. It's just the fact that having that much weight just because your opponent might be worried you pick them is, I think, a little bit too much right now. But you might remember that when RLK came out, I think Last Rider Crow was the first real instance of obvious power creep, at least in the World Arena era of the game. And even though people knew he was good when he came out, it wasn't until Golden Boys was fully realized that people figured out, oh, never mind, he's not just good, he's absolutely busted, so is a Tywin and G. Purgus, right? They were so dominant that the reason why they largely don't see a lot of play right now, except for maybe tech usage, is because they changed the way that Frenzy works to make the composition works, right? And all HP scaling bruises worse too. That's why there were very few pure, like, HP scaling bruisers that have been in the meta for a long time. In fact, the two of them that have come out is a new hero, Bellion, and a newly buffed hero, Apoc Ravi. Other than that, though, there are really not that many of them that have held over since Season 2 and 3, right? Like I said, it's more than just power creep, right? It's too many picks right now are just too punishing for strategies. There are just way too many hard counters or units that justify drafting around even if you don't know your opponent is going to pick them or even has them, right? So, like, if I want to protect against, say, Fairy Tail, right? And I have first pick, and I pick FCC. Well, FCC actually has a couple of units that do, well, extremely well against your comps, like LQC, Sigrid, stuff like that. Let's say I want to protect against AOL, so I draft, like, Maid Politis. Or, let's say they take Maid, so I can't get her, and they also draft AOL. Now, I do have strategies against this too, but let's say I need my souls for a strategy, and they just draft Bellion, and now Bellion just became a must-ban for me. Or something like Green-Violet against any blue unit in the game, where, let's say I have a blue unit, and my other DPS is, you know, whatever, and I just know I have to ban the Violet because he just hard counters me way too hard in that scenario. It's... Or even something as old as MO Haste versus RB or Maid. That's another case where it's something really early on, I think a hard counter that was just too good at countering, like Roana to an extent. And keep in mind that Roana came out in response to a busted unit in SSB at the time, right? And this will lead me into my next point, which is how units get buffed. So, units get buffed or new units come through, and a lot of times their buffs have to do with the current meta or pushing a meta in a certain direction. So, a while ago, like buffs like the Sig buff, stuff like that, that was obviously trying to push a cleave-like meta, as all the buffs there were cleave or counter cleave types, right? And cleave did get pretty strong. Buffs like Pavel were just way too strong to push that meta. And then there were like the counter buffs, right? So the things where a unit could get changed just to make it better to counter whatever is really good at the moment. So think about like Charlotte getting her changes and her EE. That made it really good because hitting stealth units like Landy and Spectre are important right now, right? Things like Kisei's EE and her buff, right, became important to like for Carrot and stuff like that. And Violet, right, because of Rem. Because obviously, like, they knew that Rem was coming even before all that happened. And it's just this cycle of needing to have these new units, or I guess in some cases old units built up for the current meta, which might change at the whim of Smilegate at any time All they had to do is drop like a new super powerful unit and just warp everything around those things, right? Like AOL right now, and to a lesser extent Bellion, I would say. Nobody will have enough resources to handle this, at least in the short term. In the long term, yes. Give like, 5 years, and I actually think players will be able to have a lot of units like molded out, geared out, stuff like that. But we don't have 5 years to wait for this, right? It's a problem that I think has to be addressed basically immediately. One of the big things with the buffs is that, look at my heroes here, and you will notice that I have a Violet here with no Molas. I have a Kisei here with no Molas. I have a Red Mercedes here, who I just leveled and geared, by the way. Who also has no Molas? She's probably my next project right now, but these are 3 units that, if I had them built up and ready to go, I'd be in a much better spot. There'd still be problems. Obviously, all the same problems would still exist, but at least I would have access to 3 really strong, current strong heroes that were not that good in the past, and now suddenly they are, right? And Mercedes notwithstanding, because honestly, if you molded her before she got changed, you just really liked Mercedes. But Violet and Kisei were decent before, right? They just kind of fell out of a little bit of favor in the past, right? And that means other players had them built, and they didn't. When they got buffed, they just got a buffed unit that they probably have at plus 15. Like me personally, a lot of the units that got buffed or changed, I did not have built or did not even have until they were changed. So things like Charlotte, I didn't actually have one until she was changed. I think Ravi 2 wasn't built until that change happened. Same things with like, in fact, I think the only unit I had built prior to a buff was Landy. And here I am, sitting on things like, I had Carbon 2. She was built also. But I'm still waiting, I think maybe like a Find Maya buff. Maybe something like the Judge Kisei buff. Maybe. Lilibet, right? We have like Alencia sitting here doing nothing. And waiting around for units that you have built that were maybe decent in the past, but just aren't that good right now to get updated for the current meta to be viable again, really sucks. One, because you can't use units that you like. Like, I really like Ravi, and I really like Lilibet. They're some of my favorite heroes. And even though Ravi is seeing a bit of a resurgence, Lilibet has seen no use at all for, basically forever. Like, Melissa, too. Melissa has seen no use at all for, basically forever. And not only can't you use these units that you have investment in, you just fall further and further behind in mold economy because your molds are tied up in these units here that aren't doing anything for quite a long time now. Well, other players who had mold investment in other heroes too that were also not being good for a really long time, like, again, things like Landy, Violet, Kisei, Ravi, right? Charlotte, the list goes on. And those units, those players who had investment in them were, okay, I used them before when they were good, they weren't good for a while, and now they're good again, suddenly have a big boost in their overall power level because they just have that many more units that are viable in the current meta. And getting new units in the current meta would be fine and all, right? Even older units being buffed, if they didn't also push older units out. There is such a discrepancy between the best units in slot and like the second best units in slot that it feels really bad to pick the second best unit in slot. Like, if I'm gonna pick between, say, I mean, this is a pretty extreme example, but a Green Violet, who is the best single target grass DPS, and any other single target grass DPS in the game, and I'll be honest, at this point, I don't even know who is second, because all the other ones are, like, kind of not good. It feels really bad to pick a second one if Violet is off the table, right? It feels like, if I don't have Maid or Emilia, it feels really bad to pick somebody like DN. And this isn't because, like, DN's a bad hero. She's really strong. It's just that she feels so lackluster compared to what's, like, right above her. And this is the case, I feel, with a lot of heroes in the game right now. They just feel really lackluster compared to the heroes in the game that got buffed or just released that are specifically tuned to work in the current meta. I'll be honest, even though I said before they're giving us a lot of molars now, right? You can basically plus 15 a 5-star every month. It's not enough. Not for most players now, at least at the higher ranks. The fact is that they're buffing heroes and releasing new heroes that you basically not have to build, right? But are in your best interest to build for the here and now. And if you don't, you're just at a really big disadvantage. And those like 35 whatever molars you get a month doesn't cover it, right? Not to mention a lot of these heroes are DPS heroes that require plus 15 basically to function correctly. And even some Soul Weavers now and Knights, they need a lot of molars too to up their percentages and their healing and stuff like that. Because that, even though the meta is pretty aggressive, getting that like extra like 5%, 10% heal is still very important today. First of all, the Mola thing, I don't think this will happen, but the best solution would be to have recalls for molars. Like, make it like a monthly thing. I don't know, have it cost some Sky Stones, like 1,000, whatever, I don't know. I don't think they'll do this because, to be fair, Smilegate is a company and they have to make money, right? Nobody's gonna fault them for that. But there has to, I think at this point in the game, so late into it, there has to be a way to get molars back from units that might never get buffed in the future, right? Like Melissa or somebody like that, right? You know, or they do something like they just buff every unit, and they can't do that because honestly they don't have the manpower to do it. If you're wondering why units don't get balanced more often, it's simply because Smilegate themselves don't actually have the manpower to do this, and they've said this themselves. So, yeah, a good way to help the meta would be to somehow add like 20 to 30 additional new heroes or buff old heroes to be viable, right? It would definitely help the diversity. More units will be able to fill in different roles. I think matches would be better if that happened. maybe add like an extra pick and an extra ban somewhere, like at Champion Plus, to spice up other drafts too. Again though, you might notice that these are very big changes, because the systematic problem of how the cycle of units coming out, why the kits the way they are, like why buffs happen the way they do, has been going on for so long that I think the only way to fix it is to make, like at least immediately, is to make these very large changes. The other option would be to nerf units, and I don't think this can ever happen. I made a video on this before, and even though, technically speaking, nerfing a unit is probably the best option, like the easiest thing to do, right, from a logistical standpoint, it can never happen in Epic 7 now, in 2021. It just causes too many problems, right? Like, nerfing artifacts can't happen either. Too many units are built upon artifacts working the way they do. There's definitely too much of a domino effect. Otherwise, I am honestly, like, at a loss for what else they could do. The fact is that if new units keep getting stronger, and to be fair here, power creep is going to be a thing in any game like this, like card games too, but it's been revved up to such a point where you just don't feel good investing in anything. You also have how counters work, and some counters are definitely stronger than other ones. So counters that act as threats are inherently better than ones that don't. So take Bellion here, who basically counters booked comps. If Bellion did no damage, like, or significantly less damage, I actually think she'd be a bad hero. But the fact that she does decent damage on AoE and has a lot of other stuff in her kits too, like the debuffs, and takes away the souls, she's really strong. Units like, say, Obsigrid, who I don't have because I can show you, but because she does damage, as part of her like counter pick, I guess an FCC comp, makes her really strong in her role. But take, like, counters like, say, a Destina, right? Or Ray. Somebody like, even like a Meteor Cowrick. Because they don't actively represent a threat, among other issues too. Their effectiveness, or like DJ Pissar, stuff like that, their effectiveness is a lot lower because, as like an analogy, in trading card games, there's always life gain decks, so decks that aim to gain life points. The problem is that getting life points doesn't help you win. It just helps you prolong you losing. And a lot of these, like, past, like, support units that don't really help you push a winning strategy just help you lose a little bit slower. This isn't always the case, obviously. Sometimes, you know, things like Rowana, Ruel, stuff like that are going to help you win in the long run, because they might just hard counter your opponent much harder than units like Calric, Destina, Ray, stuff like that. But in some cases, you know, the notion still applies. Personally here, I don't know what can be changed about this. I do think that control should probably always be the least common composition you ever come across, because I think it is the least fun composition to fight. So I don't want to do things that would just buff control too much, but I do think that somehow a lot of these more passive picks, like a Destina, even things like Macaric, like, you know, to a lesser extent things like Kitty, have to be more viable in pushing you to a victory. Another thing I want to talk about too is the RNG in the game. And a lot of the times right now, it's very hard for me to look at a match and not think of just the numbers. Like, how many times did this counter happen? How many times was it 15%? How many times was there a dual attack? How many times did a Mainlander stun? Like, did my provoke go through? Stuff like, you know, things like that. Like, how many times it got in light proc? And so on, right? There is going to be RNG, right? And some RNG inherently is healthy for the game and basically required to make the game engaging and exciting. Not only for the viewer, but also for the player. The problem is now, is that at the top level of World Arena, the player base has always valued consistency. Now, there are reasons for this why I don't really want to get into. A lot of it does have to do with gear, but consistent strategies like Golden Boys, the reason why a lot of top players liked it was because it was consistent with very little RNG. They saw it as the best player was winning. I saw it as there was a broken composition that definitely had to be toned down at the time. But that notwithstanding, RNG seems heightened because, one, a lot of things in the meta are very consistent. They always happen at this, like, almost all the time. So, like, AOL, like, 100% provokes, Mei Chloe, stuff like that. And when you see, like, resist or a 50, or like a 5%, something like that, you basically know that you got RNG'd out a lot of the times. And beyond that, the RNG on heroes that are built in, like Rem, Violet, Bellion on her, like, Elbrus counter build, are so impactful that you're willing to give up the consistency for it. Because hitting that RNG at the right time can basically win you a match. And because of this, when a hero like Rem, right? Or Violet just goes off and wins the match for a player, it doesn't feel like it was earned because of what a high roll it was. Now, this doesn't mean that these heroes that have this big RNG in their kits are overpowered or anything. Violet and Rem both have counterplay. I would say that Rem has a little more counterplay than Violet does. I do think some things have to be done about getting Violet more counterplay right now. But in a large part, it's not like you feel they're unbeatable. It's just that when they do beat you, it just feels really bad. Now, I do want to talk about Normal Arena and Guild Wars very briefly. Because of the Hunt buff event, I didn't push in Arena, so I'm not in Legend right now. I'm only in Champion. So this is not indicative of what I would normally fighting. I guess I can see the rankings here for the top ranks. And generally, you fight stuff like this, right? When you're, you know, around Legend rank in Arena. And all these defenses are awful to fight. The Normal Arena is the only, I guess to a lesser extent, Guild Wars, but Normal Arena is set up in a way where the strategy is to actively make you not want to play the game. And that's not a good piece of content. If the goal is where I don't want to fight this, I don't fight anything, so I just don't fight anybody, that's not healthy. They can remedy this by having, like, rotating bans, like, every week. They can change some of the rules. Maybe things like counterattacks don't work one time. Maybe, like, you can't get silenced. Whatever, you know, things like that. Like, some heals can't be used on defense. Maybe Knight's HP scaling gets turned off. Stuff like that. Maybe you can't revive. And have, like, restrictions for, like, the offense, too, right? What I do like about Normal Arena is the puzzle solving aspect, right? Like, what can I do with my unit to beat this other team? The problem is that a lot of teams are very similar to each other, so the puzzle solving experiment is over for, like, several weeks until a new unit comes out, and I have to do it again. And once it happens to that time, it just gets really boring, having to, like, slog through some of these compositions here. Right. And anytime something happens where there's a team or a group of players at various skill levels, it is always harder to give more motivation for the player base without making it seem unfair. I know that in the past, top guilds wanted, like, top guild rewards. I always felt this was kind of selfish, honestly. Like, top guilds felt that they deserved rewards for being a top guild, which I don't think is the case. But I do think some of the things that were proposed were not bad, right? The big thing I think I would add in is a Guild Wars shop where, let's say, if you do your fights, just do them. Like, you don't have to, like, win the fights. Just do the fights. You get some currency. Maybe get a little bit of bonus currency if you win your fights. And if you're in a, say, an X4 plus guild, so not like a bottom feeder, right? But still, like, you know, not even like a top, like, 500 guild, I would say, in some servers. You'll be able to buy out the shop every season, right? And maybe have it where once you buy out the shop, some players who have extra currency, who are in, like, stronger guilds, can buy a repeatable thing, like maybe a rare catalyst chest, or like maybe blank. So an idea I have is having blank modification stones things, so you know when you get those, when you extract your mod stones and you feed them into your steeple for those, maybe you can get those too, so you can actually, I don't know, use the steeple to get those mod stones, because my god, are there not enough of them going around to use that thing the way I think is intended to be used. And the reason why I don't think they should do this for World Arena is because any rewards to World Arena is not going to fix the problems with World Arena. It's just going to make people who don't like it right now, which is a lot of people, feel compelled to do it when they don't want to. And it makes people who maybe don't feel that strong or stronger to do it feel forced to do it, right? At least with the Guild Wars system that I proposed, you don't have to be that strong to do it. You just have to be actively contributing towards a community, which I think is definitely more important than pushing individual rewards for a piece of content that right now isn't that good. And that's everything. Don't forget that even though I personally will not going to be streaming a lot of Epic 7, there are still pieces of Epic 7 content I will still be streaming. And this includes the live streams, things like polls, reviews, account help, stuff, probably things like gear rolling will also happen. But other than that, a lot of it I will do off stream. As for the videos that will come out too, things like new hero analyses, buff analysis, that will also be things that I will go over. Because honestly, as much problems as I have, those things are still exciting to me, right? Like things like summoning, I still like doing. And since it rarely happens now where I actually get to summon something, you know, I definitely want to show that there are still good points in the game. It's just that the end game right now is pretty bad. But don't hesitate to hop on the Twitch, the Discord, anything, ask any questions about anything. I'm Wild Neptune. It's been a good one. Nep out.